I get it, you're staring at the price tag on a new bow mount trolling motor and wondering if you're about to make a smart upgrade or just drop cash on something you'll barely use. A lot of my friends who are getting into serious saltwater fishing hit that same crossroads, especially when the motor you're eyeing promises a ton of tech, but also comes with a heftier price. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've spent the last couple of weeks actually installing a 70-pound thrust unit on my 16-foot boat, watching the G-piece guided runs, and digging through a mix of forum threads and the handful of reviews that exist. Here's what I learned, so you can decide whether this Minn Kota Riptide PowerDrive with the micro remote is worth the money for you. First off, the category itself is a bit of a minefield. Bow-mount electric trolling motors have been around for years, but the recent wave adds GPS integration, corrosion-resistant housings, and smart power management. Those upgrades sound great on paper, but they also mean you're buying a system, not just a motor. The Riptide PowerDrive is positioned as a premium option for saltwater anglers who want to drop a line hundreds of yards offshore without constantly fiddling with a hand control. That promise is what makes the hesitation real. You're paying for the convenience of a guided run, but you also need to be ready for the extra wiring, a larger battery, and a bit of a learning curve. Let's talk about the actual setup because that's where most people trip up. The motor comes with a 54-inch shaft, which is perfect for a typical bow mount on a boat of my size. If you have a shorter deck or a low-profile bow, you'll need to double-check clearance. Some anglers end up having to trim the shaft a few inches, which isn't a huge deal, but does add an extra step. The mounting bracket bolts right onto the bow, and the whole thing feels solid once the bolts are torqued down. What's different from older models is the deploy assist lever. Instead of pulling the motor out manually and hoping it stays level, you pull a lever and the unit slides forward and locks into place with a single motion. In practice, it's a real time saver when you're trying to launch before the tide changes. Power is where the Riptide starts to show why it's a premium piece. The motor draws from a 12-volt deep cycle battery, and Minn Kota's efficient power management does more than just promise longer run times. The system monitors how much thrust you're actually using and throttles the draw down to keep the battery from dipping too quickly. On my test runs, I could cruise at 2 knots for about 4.5 hours before the voltage started to sag, which is impressive for a 70-pound unit. That said, if you're planning on running at the full 5-knot burst for long periods, say, when fighting a big snapper in a strong offshore current, the battery will drain much faster, and you'll need either a larger battery bank or a generator on board. That's a hidden trade-off many first-time buyers overlook. The motor itself isn't the only cost. You're also investing in the power source that can actually feed it. The standout feature for me was the advanced GPS trolling system. You can plot a waypoint on the accompanying app, then press autopilot, and the motor will hold a precise speed and direction without you touching a joystick. In a real-world scenario, I set a waypoint 600 yards out on a reef and let the system take over while I cast a line, then let it bring the lure back at a steady 2-knot pace. It eliminated the fatigue of constantly adjusting the throttle with a hand control, and the GPS lock stayed solid even with a bit of chop. If you're the type who likes to set it and forget it while you focus on reading the water, that's a huge win. Now, let's be clear about who should actually get this motor. If you spend most of your weekends on a mid-sized boat targeting game fish in saltwater, think king mackerel, amberjack, or even tarpon, this is the kind of tool that can turn a tiring day on the water into a more enjoyable one. The GPS guidance helps you stay in a productive spot longer, and the corrosion-protected housing means you won't be pulling rusted components out of the water after a season. If you already have a decent battery bank and are comfortable wiring a bow mount, the Riptide fits right into that workflow. On the flip side, if you fish primarily on inland lakes, use a small aluminum skiff, or just want a basic motor to get your boat moving a few yards, you'll probably be better off with a simpler, lower thrust model. The 70 pounds rating is overkill for calm, shallow water, and you'll end up paying for power you never use. Also, the micro remote, while compact, can feel a bit finicky if you're used to a larger, tactile controller. The buttons are tiny, and in bright sunlight they